Productive Pastor 117, how I'm learning new vocational capacity. What's going on, friends? Chad, we're back. Another episode of Productive Pastors, where we talk about healthy ministry through strategic productivity. And I'm glad to be bringing this one to you. A couple things before we jump off. This episode is sponsored by my course, Becoming Productive. If you're unsatisfied about your own personal productivity, you want to intentionally work on it, it's a great starting point. The first half of the course covers the larger idea of how you work in an individualized way and how to discern this. And the second half of the course is all about building out specific practices around personal productivity. You can find this, go to the show notes, revchadbrooks.com/PPP/117. Look for the link with Becoming Productive. It's only $49. It's a great deal. Tons of content, modules, videos, worksheets, the whole nine yards. Second thing I want to ask you is this. Are you getting the Productive Pastor emails? I write each week about a practical approach to a specific part of ministry productivity. Each month gets a focus, and each week we drill down into the specific area. Over 500 pastors are on that list right now. I'd love to have you come on, join the email list, and hang out there. So, vocational capacity. That sounds like a big word. But in the past few months, I've transitioned into a new ministry season. I'm not serving a local congregation at all for the first time, I think, in 15 years. I'm also not doing hardly any coaching or development on the side. I'm a full-time denominational officer. I cover my entire state. I've got over 260 churches I work with. And this is the thing. Ministry changes. Very few folks will step into a role where they start and then they retire from that role. Even if they do, and I do know a couple of folks. My dad kind of did that. He worked at two churches over a 50-year career. One of them was for 44 years. But things change. They do that. My dad had 4 different job titles at that church. Regardless of where you are in ministry, there'll be time to learn new focuses, new skills, that sort of thing. That's what we're talking about when I say vocational capacity. And we will rarely have some wild native ability to immediately understand 100% of those new skills. We have to learn how to learn them. And the biggest piece about this is identifying them and realizing, where this has to happen. I've talked before about the conscious competency paradigm, and that's where a lot of this thought is coming from. And it's really, there's 2 questions you have to ask yourself when you get started. First one is this: what do you think you will need? And what do you think is going to matter in this new space? What are the things you think you're going to have to learn to grow? What do you think are going to be the challenges? All that sort of stuff. And identifying those before you even get started is going to be pretty helpful. But then the second thing is, what will you actually need? And this might take a few months to figure out. Learning vocational capacity and developing the ability to level up in something like this is not necessarily an easy thing. And this is why I'm passionate about this. We don't talk about this in Bible college or in seminary. And so many times I've worked with pastors that they struggle to understand there's a part of the job, the job side of ministry that they're not good at, they need to grow in. And they hear feedback about it and they get frustrated. We've got this weird thing where we almost attach spiritual worth and value to our ability to know how to operate Microsoft Excel and how to have a conversation with a person who works on our church staff. Like, your spiritual development has nothing to do. It could a little bit, but it doesn't affect your spiritual worth of what this looks like. So first step is this: you need to develop a plan. The better you can come up with a plan, the better it's going to be at the beginning. And I've had to do this, I think, 3 times in the last 2 years as ministry has changed for me. I moved in 2022. From being a full-time pastor of a church of a couple of hundred folks. We planted the church. We built buildings. The whole thing was there for 8 years. I transitioned into 2 tiny little rural churches, and then my coaching and development practice that I had. A year into that, I dropped one of the churches, kept one of the churches, started working half-time for my annual conference in the role I'm doing right now, and then still coached and developed as well as part of that. And then now, starting in July, all I do is the conference work, and then I still hang out with y'all, Productive Pastor, because that's the thing that matters. It's the thing we value, and that, my boss and my people value. This is a thing they realize just makes me better at what I do. So that I've had a lot of ministry shifts over the last couple of years, and every time I've done this, I've had to sit down and think about a plan. Taking just 15 minutes to sit down and reflect through it all, that will get you really far in the long run. It's just asking yourself a couple of questions and thinking about things. What or how can you own perhaps a larger friction point that's part of the ministry or organization? What do you think would be the known things or the capacities that you need on day one? And some of this is going to come from how previous people have done the job, or maybe how systems are failed, or it might be a critique that you're already aware of the organization saying, hey, I need to own this part of this really quickly. This is going to matter a lot. And from that point, you can ask yourself other questions like, okay, what skills is this going to take? Maybe what are the skills I'm going to have to learn? How do I maybe need to adapt what I currently know because this is a different situation and I can't just, take my current assumptions in and assume it's going to work 100% just like it always did. You also might need to ask yourself questions about, what do you need to do well in this new role? Like what's going to matter a lot that perhaps did not matter previously? I'm learning to become a detail person. I had something today that's really frustrating pop up, and it was like, Chad, you need to own more details. You need to create more checklists and make sure this stuff is carried, because even though it's not your work, it's somebody else's work, details can be a massive bottleneck. So learn to look at the details, so much. What's new to the situation, to the ministry, to the context, the organizational structure, the time. One of the conversations I've had with pastors so much, especially in normal sized churches, is it's not uncommon to spend a decade in your ministry career and the only staff person you have to manage is maybe a part-time secretary or a part-time church musician on Sunday. And then what happens when you show up at a place and you've got a couple more full-time staff members and you've got this staff team of like 6 or 7 people you're learning to manage? That's a huge thing. Like that's a learned skill that takes a lot of learning to do. And so think about what's new in the situation. Think about what scares you. It's okay. Be honest. Don't name the things. Name like, hey, I'm really worried that I'm not going to be good enough to keep up with the details of the new job. I thought about that a lot and had to put in, a lot of, I'm jumping ahead right now, but I had to put in a lot of, Trello checklists and some systems and stuff to make sure that this did not get overwhelming too quick. I was coaching somebody last year. They were at a nonprofit, and they were, high up in leadership at the nonprofit. Then they became the executive director of the nonprofit. And they literally said, hey, I'm scared. We asked them this question in coaching. What are you scared of? And the person said, hey, I'm going to have to know our finances significantly better and different than I know right now, because as the executive director, I'm going to have to answer for all this stuff. So that this person had to develop some really specific expertise really quick. And so we created some pathways and some ways to do this. And I loved coming back the next month for our conversation. I said, are you still scared about this? He said, no, I'm not. I don't know everything I need to know yet, but I'm not scared about it. I'm getting better. I'm learning these things out. Just that question, what scares you, can be an incredibly important thing for pastors. Let's say you left a rough situation and you step into the new church and you're scared of, you're still carrying fears of previous things. I call that time machining. You're in a new church, new location, new people. They're not the same folks. It's not the same situations. The only thing that's going to bring that situation back into the present is if you time machine it out of the past and put it back there. So think through about what scares you. The next question is kind of like the brother, sister of what scares you is what excites you? Like, what are you excited about getting to do? Where do you think you might have a known capacity? In that side of conscious competency, it's something you do good at, and you're aware of it, and you know where the growth edges are, and all that kind of stuff. It's where you can bring things to the table. Think about this. What maybe made you get that new role? What was going on where the people said, hey, we need to hire this person. They're going to be great at this new job. We're excited to have them there. So think about what excites you, because those excitement points often can be the leverage to get a handful of quick wins early on, which is a very good thing to do and a strategic thing to do. So that's a lot of questions I've just dumped off at you right there. But you're thinking about a plan, and your plan's going to change. But the next stage is this: just work your plan. This is where you start changing things, and you're changing things about you. You're not changing things about the organization, or you're intentionally developing certain things. Come in, adapt your approach to strategic productivity. The days, the weeks, the whole system, the stuff we talk about in Becoming Productive and the Trello course for ministry. Get flexible around the new reality, but, go in there and make some changes that you think that you're going to have to make. It's going to help you navigate things. Put in new recurring or focused tasks. Like, hey, every other week I need to check in with my finance person about this. Or every week I need to make sure that the secretary has the stuff for the bulletin by Wednesday morning. That's how this church operates. I used to be a Thursday morning person. This church is a Wednesday morning person. I'm going to put a recurring event in there to know this is when this deadline is. Now, I use Trello for so much of this, but I told you earlier, I completely wiped my weekly dashboard template clean a few months ago. And it took, around 10 minutes to make some new basic assumptions about things. And here I am 4 months later, and I'm still tweaking that template. It's not odd that every couple of weeks I go and I make a change inside of my template before I create my new dashboard for the week, because things changes. I learn how to do new things. Sometimes things become automated to the point where I don't have to focus on them so much. I learn where the adaptations need to happen. I learn how different people have and need different communication skills, and I can build stuff out that differently. Sometimes what it means we have to revise our core convictions towards the needs of the larger organization. Episode 77, I talked about how core convictions help our productivity. And I'm not saying for you to change yourself or to change your core convictions, but refocused on how you work best. Part of my core convictions is I do things as a coach all of the time, even if it's not a coaching relationship. And sometimes I realize, hey, I'm going to adapt the way I communicate with this one person, or I work alongside of them, or I lead them to have more coaching conversations and coaching questions as part of things. Because this not only helps them keep them more accountable, but it creates a greater clarity around what we're doing. And so, the way we move and shape, those core convictions are the things and the ways that we approach ministry that will never change, but we adapt them into our current context. And so, doing that core conviction work, I will tell you this: if you're changing churches as a pastor, that is the ideal time to start developing core convictions and working forwards from those core convictions. So develop a plan, work the plan. That's the best way, to change vocational capacity. So this is what I've been doing. Kind of go down a little personal on this. I put some stuff on the back burner for a bit. And the podcast was one of them. I kept episodes cranking out in July and August. And then I realized, hey, I need some more margin to think through some things. And so I'm going to back burner the podcast for a couple of months so I can, manage this change a little bit better, build in some new rhythms. I'm batching episodes for the first time ever. I've always done episodes week by week. Occasionally, if I want to have an episode released while I'm on vacation, I'll do a second episode. I've got 7 episodes I'm recording right now. I've outlined and done that. Like, okay, this is what has to keep the podcast running. I'm going to batch record these episodes and then take like 4 hours on a weekend and record every single one of them, go in, do the show notes, create that stuff, upload them, schedule them, all of that, because it matters. But it got backburnered for a little bit, and I'm not ashamed by that at all. The second thing I've had to learn is that smaller tasks are more important. And so I went in and I retooled both my day sheet and my Trello dashboard to reflect this. I created space to track these sorts of things. I'm significantly more of an administrator now than I ever have been. If you know me personally, the word administrator is very rarely a word you would attach to Chad Brooks, but that's the reality of where I am right now. So this helps me in the day-to-day. Also, it helps me plan out the rest of my week based on any sort of change where I can track and see the small tasks. Another thing I realized was for this situation, communication was extremely important. And I will let myself be significantly more responsive than I have been in the past because of how critical communication is. And I have, some specific blocks inside of my schedule every day. I personally, unless somebody, emails me on a Friday or Saturday, I get back to them typically within a couple of hours. It's just a thing I try to do. I'm not always great at it, but I try to do that now because it matters. And there's also something I feel like is if it's a non-emergent issue and I get a Saturday email, you hear from me on Monday. But if it's an emergent thing, I email back, I take care of it. We jump on a call or something, we figure it out. But communication is a very important thing for my job right now. I've also had to think about my files and my tasks. I've had to develop some really strong file structures because I'm managing a lot more right now. And I've had to tweak out the way I approach Trello to see, I've got some projects that back when I was ministry, I might have one project at a time was at this level. And, now I have 4 or 5 or sometimes 6 of them. It keeps things moving. It makes it easier to find stuff quickly and to just, check in and make sure stuff's moving down the line. So vocational capacity is not something you're born with. It's something that's going to change. And, if we love this work, if we love our job, we love our churches, we realize there's going to be times we're going to have to level up our vocational capacity. My wife works in the corporate world. This is a normal thing for other people. And here's the deal. The people we pastor have to navigate in their own job as well. And so in a lot of ways, us just coming at this, it just shows people, hey, this is what this work was like for everybody. It helps us understand some of the tough changes and transitions the folks in our pews or our seats go through. And you can do it. This is an easy kind of quick dive into it, but come up with a plan and work the plan. And even if you're not moving, you're going to have situations where this changes and you have to go through and think through this stuff. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and it can talk about it for quite a long time, but we're not going to necessarily talk about it so much right now. Now, you can go find the show notes at revchadbrooks.com/117. I'm excited about this kind of batch of episodes that we have coming up. And our next episode is going to be a pretty cool episode. And so it'll be a fun episode. I'm looking forward to it. And we're going to just have it jump out. We're going to go full into it. And so I'm excited about that. I was trying to find my notes as what the next episode was, but I can't. I'm going to focus on you instead. So it'll be a surprise. We'll be back next week, another episode of Productive Pastor. As always, I'm Chad. Thanks so much for hanging out and being with us today.